What happens when the woman you destroyed returns with the power to erase everything you've built? When a Thanksgiving wedding becomes a battlefield, and a $500 million secret threatens to burn an empire to the ground. This is a story about betrayal, hidden empires, and the dangerous line between revenge and redemption. Hello, wonderful people. Before we dive into this absolute whirlwind of a story, I have to ask, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments because I love seeing how far these stories reach. And hey, how are you doing today? I hope you're settling in with something warm because this one's going to grab you and not let go. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to follow how this ends. Now let's begin. The helicopter blades cut through the November sky like scissors through silk. Adrian Cole stood on the limestone terrace of his Connecticut estate, champagne flute frozen halfway to his lips, watching the black aircraft descend toward his manicured lawn with the precision of a predator. The Thanksgiving afternoon sun glinted off its obsidian body, and for one irrational moment, he thought about running inside and pretending he hadn't seen it. But Adrian Cole didn't run. He'd built a $12 billion empire by standing his ground. Still, his jaw tightened. Darling, who on earth is that? Vanessa Chin appeared at his elbow, her diamond-laden fingers wrapping possessively around his arm. Her silk wedding gown, custom Valentino, ivory with gold threading, rustled like a whisper of wealth. We're not expecting anyone by helicopter. Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he knew exactly who it was. The guest list for today's wedding/Thanksgiving celebration read like a Forbes edition. Senators, tech moguls, old money dynasties, and the kind of people who measured their worth in influence rather than zeros. 300 guests mingled below on the south lawn, crystal glasses catching light, laughter floating up like expensive perfume. Everything had been perfect. Until now. The helicopter touched down 70 yards from the main pavilion, and Adrian felt his lungs constrict. Around him, conversation stuttered and died. Heads turned. Someone dropped a champagne flute, and it shattered with a sound like breaking promises. The aircraft door opened. She stepped out. Elena Ward. His ex-wife. The woman he'd loved. The woman he'd destroyed. The woman who, according to every report his investigators had compiled, should have been living in a modest Brooklyn apartment, working as a consultant, barely scraping by after their divorce settlement 3 years ago. She wasn't dressed like someone barely scraping by. Elena wore a tailored emerald suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, her dark hair swept back in a way that showcased the sharp, elegant angles of her face. She moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who owned the ground beneath her feet. All of it, everywhere she walked. But it was what she carried that made Adrian's blood turn to ice. A slim leather portfolio. Dark burgundy. Unmistakable. He knew that portfolio. He'd seen one exactly like it once before, in a boardroom in Singapore, when a family conglomerate had been quietly purchased out from under a oil tycoon who'd thought himself untouchable. Adrian. Vanessa's voice climbed an octave. Adrian, who is that? Behind Elena, 2 figures emerged from the helicopter. A silver-haired man in an impeccable suit. Adrian recognized him immediately as Richard Mendoza, one of the most ruthless corporate attorneys on the eastern seaboard. And beside him, a woman with a tablet and the efficient posture of someone who made billion-dollar problems disappear before breakfast. Elena's eyes found Adrian across the terrace. Even from this distance, he felt the impact like a physical blow. Those eyes, God, those eyes, had once looked at him with love, with trust, with a future written in their depths. Now they held something far more dangerous. Knowledge. She smiled. Not the warm smile he remembered from their marriage. This smile had edges sharp enough to draw blood. Who is that? Vanessa repeated, her grip tightening on Adrian's arm. Adrian, answer me. The guests had gone completely silent now. 300 of the most powerful people in America, struck mute by the arrival of a woman who shouldn't matter. But she did matter. She always had. Adrian set down his champagne glass before his shaking hand could betray him. My ex-wife. Vanessa's perfectly made-up face went pale. You invited your ex-wife to our wedding? He had. 6 weeks ago, in a moment of what? Guilt? Nostalgia? Arrogance? He'd sent the invitation to the last address he had for her, half expecting it to be returned, fully expecting her to ignore it. The invitation had been a gesture, a symbol of his magnanimity. Look how far I've risen, and look how gracious I am in victory. Except Elena didn't look defeated. She looked like she'd won a war he hadn't known they were fighting. Elena crossed the lawn with her legal team flanking her like generals. Guests parted instinctively, creating a corridor lined with dropped jaws and frantic whispers. Someone's phone camera flashed. Adrian made a mental note to have his PR team kill that footage. If he still had a PR team by the end of today. She climbed the terrace steps, and Adrian's father, Harrison Cole, 73 and still commanding as a ship's captain, materialized from somewhere inside the house, his face a thundercloud. What is the meaning of this? Harrison demanded. Elena didn't even glance at him. Her eyes remained locked on Adrian. Hello, Adrian. Her voice. Christ, her voice. It slid through him like whiskey and smoke, familiar and foreign all at once. Elena. He managed to keep his tone level. Barely. This is unexpected. Is it? She tilted her head, and something flickered in her expression. Amusement, maybe. Or pity. You invited me. I didn't think. That I'd come? Or that I'd come like this? She gestured vaguely to the helicopter, to her appearance, to the lawyer who probably cost $10,000 an hour. Adrian's mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, angles. This was what he did. He thought 3 moves ahead, he anticipated, he controlled. But standing here with Elena's green eyes pinning him in place, he felt like he was playing a game whose rules had been changed without his knowledge. What do you want? The question came out harder than he intended. Elena's smile widened. She lifted the burgundy portfolio. I came to give you a wedding gift. Vanessa made a small sound of outrage. Harrison stepped forward, his hand raised. Now you listen here. 47%, Elena said quietly. The words meant nothing to the gathered crowd. But Adrian felt them like a knife between his ribs. No, it wasn't possible. I'm sorry. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Elena opened the portfolio, and Richard Mendoza produced a document, thick, official, embossed with law firm seals. 47% of Cole Industries, acquired over the past 18 months through a network of shell companies, international investments, and private equity firms. Her voice carried across the terrace, clear and cold. Combined with the 22% I retained in the divorce settlement, the shares everyone thought I'd sold, that gives me 69% controlling interest. The terrace exploded in gasps and frantic murmurs. Adrian couldn't breathe. That's impossible. I would have known. My team would have. Your team did exactly what they were paid to do, Elena interrupted. They protected Cole Industries from external threats. They just didn't realize the threat was already inside. She paused, let that sink in. You taught me well, Adrian. You taught me that in business, sentiment is weakness. That the person who controls the shares controls the empire. She took a step closer, and Adrian caught the scent of her perfume. Different from what she used to wear, more expensive, more complex. So here's your wedding gift, Elena said softly, for his ears only. The truth. About why I disappeared. About who really sabotaged our marriage. About the empire you think you built. She pressed the document into his hands. And a choice, she whispered. Read this now in front of everyone or come with me, alone, and I'll tell you everything. Adrian's mind reeled through the impossible mathematics. 69%. The words kept echoing in his skull like a death knell. He looked down at the document in his hands. Share certificates, acquisition records, legal filings spanning 18 months. His hands shook. Actually shook. Adrian Cole, who'd stared down hostile boardrooms and weathered market crashes without flinching, couldn't keep his hands steady. This is extortion, Vanessa hissed beside him. Adrian, call security. Have her removed. But Adrian barely heard her. He was staring at Elena, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the one he'd divorced 3 years ago. That Elena had been brilliant, yes. She'd been his equal in every way that mattered. But she'd also been soft. Kind. She believed in second chances and the goodness of people. This Elena looked like she'd had that softness surgically removed. When, he asked hoarsely. When did you? Does it matter? Elena's expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind her eyes. Pain? Satisfaction? He couldn't tell anymore. He'd once been able to read every emotion that crossed her face. Harrison Cole pushed forward, his face crimson. This is absurd. Those acquisitions can be challenged. We have entire legal teams. Go ahead. Richard Mendoza spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. Every acquisition was legal, properly documented, and filed with the SEC. Ms. Ward has been extraordinarily careful. He smiled without warmth. Though I'd expect nothing less from the woman who built Meridian Global from nothing. Adrian's head snapped up. Meridian Global? The name had been whispered in financial circles for the past year. A mysterious investment firm that had orchestrated 3 major corporate acquisitions. Always operating through intermediaries. Never revealing its principal owner. Market analysts called it the Ghost Empire, because no one could identify who controlled it. Elena's smile was razor-sharp. Surprise. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Meridian Global wasn't just successful. It was worth an estimated $500 million. And Elena owned it. She hadn't just survived their divorce. She'd thrived. I don't understand, Adrian said, and hated how lost he sounded. The settlement. You took $20 million and walked away. My investigators said you were living modestly, working contract jobs. Your investigators saw what I wanted them to see. Elena's voice softened, just slightly. You taught me that too, Adrian. Misdirection. The art of the blind spot. 3 years ago, their divorce had been brutal and public. The tabloids had feasted on it. Billionaire CEO divorces wife over alleged corporate espionage. The narrative had been clear. Elena had been caught leaking company secrets to a competitor. The evidence had been damning. She'd signed the divorce papers without contest, taken her settlement, and disappeared. Adrian had told himself it was necessary, that he'd had no choice. But standing here now, watching Elena command his terrace like she owned it, which legally she apparently did, doubt crept in like frost. Why now? He asked quietly. Why come back today? Elena's eyes held his, and for a moment he saw a flash of the woman he'd married. The woman who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and fallen asleep on his shoulder during long flights. The woman who'd whispered her dreams against his chest in the dark. Then the moment passed. Because you're about to make the same mistake twice, she said. And I'm not heartless enough to let you marry someone who's playing the same game I was accused of. Vanessa's gasp was audible. How dare you? Chin Technologies, Elena said, turning to face Vanessa directly. Your father's company. Convenient how this wedding happens to coincide with the merger talks between Cole Industries and Chin Tech. Convenient how marrying Adrian gives your family access to Cole's proprietary software development division. She paused. Tell me, Vanessa, when exactly did you plan to transfer those patents to your family's portfolio? Before or after the honeymoon? The color drained from Vanessa's face. Adrian's stomach dropped. What is she talking about? Elena pulled another document from her portfolio. This one stamped with corporate seals he recognized. Chin Technologies letterhead. Patent transfer agreements, already drafted. Dated 6 months ago, before Adrian even proposed. She handed them to him. Your fiancé's father has been planning to gut your R&D division from the inside. The marriage was just the access point. Adrian's world tilted. He looked at Vanessa, waiting for her to deny it. To laugh. To call Elena a liar. Vanessa's silence was deafening. Adrian's voice cracked. Is this true? It's business, Vanessa said finally, her composure fracturing. It's what families do. Strategic alliances, asset consolidation. You of all people understand this. I understand theft, Adrian said coldly. I understand betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd accused Elena of the same thing 3 years ago. Harrison grabbed Adrian's shoulder. Son, we can salvage this. The merger still benefits us. No. The word came out flat, final. Adrian turned to Elena. You said you'd tell me everything. About our marriage. About what really happened. Something shifted in Elena's expression. a crack in the armor. Not here. Not in front of them. She gestured to her helicopter, still waiting on the lawn. It was insane. His wedding guests were watching. His father was gripping his arm. Vanessa was sputtering protests. The entire carefully constructed day was collapsing around him like a house of cards. But Adrian found he didn't care. Because if there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility, that he'd been wrong about Elena 3 years ago, he needed to know. "Give me 30 minutes, he told his father. Then to Vanessa, "Don't be here when I get back." He followed Elena down the terrace steps. Behind them, the Thanksgiving wedding party erupted in chaos. But ahead, the helicopter waited, its blades already beginning to spin. And Elena, mysterious, dangerous, impossible Elena, looked back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Are you sure you want the truth?" she asked over the rising wind. "Because once you know it, everything changes." Adrian thought about the empire he'd built, the life he'd constructed, the certainty he'd wrapped around himself like armor. "I'm sure," he said. Elena nodded once, then climbed into the helicopter. Adrian followed her into the unknown. The helicopter lifted off, and Adrian watched his estate shrink below. The white pavilion, the scattered guests, the ruins of his wedding day. From this height, it all looked impossibly small. The cabin was leather and silence. Elena sat across from him, Richard Mendoza beside her, both wearing expressions that gave nothing away. The third member of her team, the woman with the tablet, sat near the pilot, her fingers flying across the screen. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked. "Manhattan. My office." Elena's voice was barely audible over the rotors. 20 minutes. 20 minutes alone with her. Adrian's chest tightened. He forced himself to look away, to focus on the document still clutched in his hands. The share certificates. The proof that everything he'd believed about his empire was a lie. How? The question came out rougher than he intended. "How did you do this? After the divorce, you had 20 million. Enough to live comfortably, but not enough to build." He gestured vaguely at the helicopter, at her, at everything she'd become. Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching the landscape blur beneath them. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that made Adrian's stomach clench. "Do you remember Thomas Mercer?" The name hit Adrian like a fist. Thomas Mercer. His former CFO. The man who'd brought Adrian the evidence of Elena's supposed betrayal. Emails, wire transfers, meeting records that proved she'd been selling Coal Industries' secrets to their biggest competitor. "He died 2 years ago," Adrian said carefully. "Heart attack. Convenient timing." Elena's smile was bitter. "He died 3 weeks before the statute of limitations expired on corporate fraud charges I was preparing to file." Adrian's pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Thomas Mercer framed me." Elena leaned forward, her green eyes blazing. "Every piece of evidence he showed you, the emails, the transfers, all of it was fabricated. He'd been embezzling from Coal Industries for years, hiding it in dummy accounts. When your internal audit got too close, he needed a scapegoat." The helicopter banked, and Adrian's world tilted with it. "That's impossible. I saw the evidence myself. Your email account, your digital signature." "Forged," Richard Mendoza interjected, pulling out his own tablet. "We've had 3 independent cybersecurity firms analyze the original files. The metadata was altered, the timestamps manipulated. It was sophisticated work, but it was fake." He handed the tablet to Adrian. Screen after screen of technical analysis, each one highlighting inconsistencies in the evidence that had destroyed his marriage. Adrian's hands went numb. No, I had my best people verify." "Thomas was your CFO," Elena said quietly. "He had access to everything, including your verification team's reports. He fed you exactly what you needed to see." The cabin felt too small, the air too thin. Adrian's mind raced back 3 years, to the day Thomas had walked into his office with a manila folder and a grave expression. "I'm sorry, Adrian. I wish I didn't have to show you this." Adrian had trusted him. Thomas had been with Coal Industries for 15 years. He'd been at Adrian's wedding to Elena. He'd been. Oh God. The words escaped before Adrian could stop them. He was your mentor. You trusted him. Something cracked in Elena's composure. Just for a second, but Adrian saw it. The flash of old pain, old betrayal. He was like a father to me, she whispered. When you accused me, when you showed me that evidence, I knew it was fake. But I also knew I couldn't prove it. Thomas had been too careful. Her voice hardened. So I took the divorce settlement, let you and the world think I was guilty, and I disappeared. Not to hide, to hunt. The 20 million, Adrian said slowly, pieces falling into place. You used it to investigate. Every penny. I hired forensic accountants, cybersecurity experts, private investigators. It took me 8 months to trace Thomas's embezzlement scheme. Another 6 to find his offshore accounts. Elena's eyes glittered. And there it was, $47 million, stolen from your company over a decade. Your CFO had been bleeding you dry. Adrian felt sick. Why didn't you come to me then? If you had proof. Because I was angry. The words exploded out of her, raw and sharp. Because the man I loved, the man who'd promised to trust me, to believe in me, had thrown me away the moment it became convenient. You didn't even question it, Adrian. Thomas showed you that folder, and you just accepted it. The accusation hung between them like smoke. Adrian wanted to defend himself, to explain that the evidence had been overwhelming, that he'd had no choice. But the words died in his throat because she was right. He hadn't questioned it. Deep down, some part of him had always been waiting for Elena to be too good to be true. I wanted to hurt you the way you hurt me, Elena continued, her voice dropping. So I took Thomas's stolen money, ironically hidden in an account under my forged signature, and I built an empire. Meridian Global. I spent 3 years becoming powerful enough that you'd have to see me, have to listen. The helicopter began its descent. Through the window, Adrian saw the Manhattan skyline rising like teeth. And the shares? He asked hoarsely. Every acquisition was legitimate. I bought them because coal industries is a good investment. Elena's smile returned, sharp and dangerous. But also because I wanted you to feel what I felt. Powerless. Betrayed. Stripped of everything you'd built. The helicopter touched down on a private rooftop helipad. Through the glass walls of the building below, Adrian could see a sprawling corner office. Modern, powerful, unmistakably Elena's domain. She stood, smoothing her emerald suit. So here's your choice, Adrian. I control your company now. I can dismantle it piece by piece, sell it to your competitors, destroy everything your family built. She paused at the helicopter door. Or you can work with me. Help me finish what I started, exposing every person who was complicit in Thomas's scheme. Because he didn't work alone. Adrian's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Elena looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw something that terrified him more than her anger or her power. He saw certainty. Your father knew Adrian, she said quietly. Harrison knew Thomas was embezzling. And he helped frame me to cover it up. The world stopped. That's a lie. But even as Adrian said it, doubt crept in like poison. Elena offered her hand, not in affection but in challenge. Come inside. I'll prove everything. Adrian stared at her outstretched hand. Behind him lay his old life, his father, his empire, everything he'd thought was true. Ahead lay Elena and her impossible accusations, a truth that could destroy everything. He took her hand. Her fingers closed around his, warm and familiar and foreign all at once. For the record, she said as she pulled him out of the helicopter, I never stopped loving you. That's what made this so hard. Then she released him and walked toward her empire, leaving Adrian to follow. Or fall. Elena's office occupied the entire 53rd floor, all glass and steel with views of Central Park. The space screamed power, minimalist furniture, cutting-edge technology, success made visible. Adrian had thought she was struggling in Brooklyn. He'd been so wrong. Seat. Elena gestured to a chair across from her desk. Adrian remained standing. Prove it. Prove my father knew. Elena pulled up files on her computer, projecting them onto the wall-sized screen. Bank statements appeared, coal industries accounts from 4 years ago. Thomas moved money in patterns, she explained. Small amounts, irregular intervals. But look here. She highlighted a series. Every 3 months. $200,000 to an offshore account in the Caymans. That doesn't prove. Those transfers required 2 signatures. Company policy for anything over 100,000. She pulled up authorization forms.
Thomas Mercier signature.
And beneath it, Harrison Cole's. Adrian's chest tightened. He could have been deceived about what he was authorizing. For 4 years. Elena's eyebrow arched. Your father built Cole Industries from nothing. He doesn't sign documents without reading them twice. She was right. Harrison Cole was pathologically careful with every signature, every expenditure. Why would he help Thomas steal from his own company? He wasn't helping him steal. Elena pulled up another file. Legal documents from 18 years ago. He was being blackmailed. Adrian moved closer. A lawsuit, settled out of court, sealed records, dated before Cole Industries went public. The plaintiff's name was redacted. What is this? Sealed wrongful death case. Thomas Mercer was the attorney who negotiated the settlement. He represented the plaintiff. Elena's voice was measured. He found something. Used it to leverage your father. And when my audit got too close 3 years ago, they needed someone to take the fall. You. Adrian felt sick. Your father suggested that internal audit. He pointed you toward investigating executive-level access. He set the trap, Adrian. Thomas just baited it. Adrian's phone erupted with calls. All from Harrison. He declined 3 before Elena nodded. Answer it. Speaker. Where the hell are you? Harrison's voice boomed. You abandoned your wedding for that woman? She has your signatures, Dad. On authorization forms for Thomas's offshore transfers. Silence stretched. Those were legitimate business expenses. For 4 years? Every 3 months? Exactly 200,000. Adrian's anger rose. Don't insult my intelligence. You don't understand the position I was in. Harrison's tone shifted, almost pleading. Thomas had information that could have destroyed everything. I did what I had to do to protect us. By framing Elena? By destroying my marriage. She was acceptable collateral damage. Harrison snapped. Because I meant what I said. I never stopped loving you. I hated you, but I never stopped. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Cole Industries CEO abandons wedding amid scandal. Vanessa Chen calls off merger. They both stared at the screen. It's starting, Elena said softly. Good. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd outsmarted him, outplayed him, built an empire in secret just to stand here and offer him truth. Then let's finish it. Together. Something shifted in Elena's expression. Hope maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Together, she repeated. But Adrian, this gets uglier before it gets better. Your father won't go quietly. The board will fight. The media will tear us both apart. Let them. He held her gaze. I've spent 3 years living a lie. I'm done with that. Elena's smile was small but genuine. Then we have work to do. She turned back to her computer, pulling up more files. Evidence. Documentation. A trail of breadcrumbs that would lead them to the truth. And Adrian stayed close, watching her work, wondering if he'd just made the best or worst decision of his life. Possibly, but they worked through the afternoon, sorting through evidence that would dismantle Harrison Cole's carefully constructed empire. Elena's team moved in and out of the office. Richard Mendoza coordinating with federal prosecutors, analysts pulling financial records, investigators tracking down the sealed lawsuit. Adrian called an emergency board meeting for the following morning. Then he called his attorney and instructed him to begin dissolution proceedings for the merger with Chen Technologies. Each phone call felt like cutting away another piece of his old life. Elena worked across from him, her focus laser-sharp. Every so often, their eyes would meet, and something would pass between them. Recognition. Understanding. The ghost of what they'd been. I need coffee, Elena announced around 6. There's a cafe downstairs. Come with me. It wasn't really a question. They rode the elevator in silence, standing carefully apart. The cafe occupied the building's ground floor. Exposed brick, soft lighting, the smell of espresso and possibility. Elena ordered something complicated. Adrian got black coffee. You still drink it like that? Elena asked as they settled into a corner booth. Like you're punishing yourself? Old habits. He wrapped his hands around the cup. Elena, about earlier. What I said about us. Don't. She held up a hand. We have bigger problems right now than whatever this is. She gestured between them. Do we? Adrian leaned forward. Because it feels like the biggest problem. It feels like everything else is just. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost declined, but something made him answer. Adrian Cole. Mr. Cole. A woman's voice, older, unfamiliar. My name is Margaret Reeves. You don't know me, but I knew your father. 18 years ago. Adrian's pulse quickened. He put the phone on speaker, glancing at Elena. I'm listening. I saw the news about your wedding. About your ex-wife. About the investigation into coal industries. The woman's voice shook. I think it's time someone told you the truth about the factory accident. About my husband, David. Elena's eyes went wide. Your husband was the worker who died, Adrian said quietly. Yes, but that's not the whole truth. Margaret took a shaky breath. Your father didn't just ignore safety reports. He knew that equipment was failing. David told him directly, 3 days before the accident. David was the floor supervisor. He refused to let his crew use those machines until they were fixed. Adrian's chest tightened. What happened? Your father fired him. Told him if he didn't get the production line running, he'd lose his job and his pension. David had 2 kids, Mr. Cole. We had a mortgage. So he did what your father ordered. Her voice broke. The machine failed 6 hours into his shift. David died trying to pull one of his workers out of the machinery. He saved that boy's life and lost his own. The cafe seemed to tilt. Adrian gripped the table. The lawsuit, he managed. The settlement. $5 million and a sealed record. Thomas Mercer negotiated it. He told me if I stayed quiet, my children would be taken care of. If I spoke out, your father's lawyers would destroy me. They'd paint David as negligent, claim he'd been drinking on the job, ruin his name. Margaret's breath hitched. I was 34 years old with 2 children and a dead husband. So I took the money and signed the papers. And I've regretted it every day since. Elena reached across the table, took Adrian's hand. He held on like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because I watched the news today. I saw that woman, your ex-wife. I saw what they did to her. How they destroyed her to protect themselves. Margaret's voice strengthened. And I realized I've been letting them do the same thing to David's memory for 18 years. So I'm done being quiet, Mr. Cole. If you're really investigating your father, if you really want the truth, I'll testify. I kept copies of everything. David's warnings to your father. The termination letter. The original accident report before your father's lawyers rewrote it. Adrian couldn't breathe. You kept copies? Thomas Mercer told me to destroy them. But David was a good man, and someone needed to remember the truth. She paused. Will you help me tell it? Yes. Adrian's voice was rough. God, yes. Whatever you need. I need you to make this mean something. I need my husband's death to count for something besides a sealed file and blood money. It will. I promise you it will. They exchanged information. Margaret would send her evidence to Elena's attorneys. She'd meet with federal prosecutors. She'd do whatever was necessary. When Adrian ended the call, his hands were shaking. Adrian. Elena's voice was soft. He was a hero. The words came out broken. That man, David Reeves. He died saving someone, and my father buried him like he was nothing. Like he was collateral damage. I know. My whole life I thought. Adrian looked up at her, and something cracked open in his chest. I thought my father was difficult but honorable. Tough but fair. I built my entire identity around being Harrison Cole's son. Around proving I was worthy of his empire. Adrian. But it's all poison, Elena. Everything he touched. Everything he built. And I defended it. I defended him. I threw you away to protect a legacy built on a good man's death. The tears came before he could stop them. Adrian Cole, who never cried, who never showed weakness, broke apart in a cafe booth while his ex-wife held his hand. You didn't know, Elena whispered. I should have. I should have questioned, should have fought harder, should have. Stop. Elena moved around the table, slid into the booth beside him. You were manipulated by someone you trusted. We both were. She pulled him against her, and Adrian buried his face in her shoulder and let himself shatter. When he finally pulled back, Elena's suit was damp with his tears. She didn't seem to care. I can't be my father's son anymore, he said hoarsely. I can't be that person. Then don't be. Elena cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Be better. Be the man who makes this right. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Her thumb brushed his cheek. We expose everything. We give Margaret Reeves her voice back. We make sure everyone knows what David Reeves did, who he was. We turn your father's empire into something that actually honors the people who built it. That'll destroy coal industries. Maybe. Or maybe it transforms it into something worth keeping. Elena's smile was sad. Either way, the truth comes out. Adrian stared at her. This woman who'd been destroyed and had rebuilt herself into something stronger. This woman who still looked at him with something other than hatred. Why are you helping me? He asked. After everything my family did to you. Because I loved you once. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. And maybe if we do this right, if we make something good come from all this pain, maybe I can love you again. Not the person you were, but the person you're becoming. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was hope. Adrian kissed her forehead. Let his lips linger there. I'll earn it. However long it takes. Good. Elena pulled back, straightened her shoulders. Because we have a press conference to plan. Margaret Reeves deserves the world to know her husband's name. They stood together, left their coffee untouched, and walked back toward the elevator. Adrian's phone buzzed with messages. His father calling repeatedly, board members demanding explanations, lawyers needing decisions. He ignored them all. Because for the first time in 3 years, he knew exactly what he needed to do. Tell the truth. No matter who it destroyed. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next morning. Margaret Reeves would tell her story. Adrian would announce a full independent investigation into coal industry's history. Elena would reveal her controlling stake and her commitment to corporate accountability. It should have felt like victory. Instead, at 2 a.m., Adrian sat alone in Elena's conference room, staring at a legal document that made his blood run cold. Richard Mendoza had delivered it an hour ago with an expression of barely contained fury. Your father moves fast, was all he'd said. The document was a countersuit. Harrison Coal, on behalf of coal industry's minority shareholders, was filing an emergency injunction to block Elena's controlling stake. The argument? Her shares had been acquired through fraudulent means, using money stolen from the company via Thomas Mercer's embezzlement scheme. It was brilliant. Vicious. Completely false. But it would work. Adrian. Elena appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, eyes heavy with interrupted sleep. She'd been resting in her private office. Richard told me. I'm sorry. He's going to tie this up in court for years. Adrian's voice was hollow. And the burden of proof is on you to show every acquisition was clean. Every shell company, every transaction, every. I know how legal proceedings work. Do you know how my father works? Adrian stood, pacing. He doesn't fight fair, Elena. He'll drag your name through every tabloid. He'll imply you were complicit with Thomas. He'll make you prove your innocence over and over until you're buried in legal fees and public opinion. Elena's jaw tightened. Let him try. And Margaret Reeves, Adrian's hands clenched. The moment we put her on that stage tomorrow, my father's attorneys will destroy her. They'll claim she fabricated evidence, that she's bitter, that she's being manipulated by you for revenge. So we don't give them the chance. We release everything tonight. He's already thought of that. Adrian gestured to another page. He's filed a gag order. Claims anything we release could prejudice potential legal proceedings. If we violate it, we're in contempt. The room fell silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation. Elena moved to the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. He's good. I'll give him that. He's a monster. Adrian's voice cracked. And he's my father. Half my DNA, half my... Don't. Elena turned sharply. You are not him. How do you know? The question exploded out of Adrian. How do you know I won't become exactly like him? 30 years from now, will I be the one burying evidence and destroying lives to protect my empire? Because you're here. Elena crossed to him. You're standing in my office at 2 in the morning, agonizing over doing the right thing. Harrison wouldn't lose a minute of sleep. Maybe I'm just better at lying to myself. Elena slapped him. Not hard, but enough to snap his head sideways, enough to shock them both. Stop it, she said fiercely. Stop spiraling. Your father wants you to doubt yourself, to give up. That's his strategy. Make this so ugly and complicated that you decide it's easier to walk away. Maybe it is easier. Adrian's voice dropped. Maybe we should walk away. Take your empire, take my shares, sell the whole thing and let someone else deal with. And what about David Reeves? Elena's eyes blazed. What about his widow, who finally found the courage to speak up? We just tell her never mind, it's too hard, go back to being silent. We can settle with her privately. Give her money, make sure She doesn't want money. Elena's voice rose. She wants her husband's name cleared. She wants the truth. And we promised her that. A promise we can't keep. Adrian shouted back. Don't you understand? My father has outmaneuvered us. We can't hold the press conference because of the gag order. We can't use your controlling stake because it's frozen in litigation. We can't. His phone rang. Unknown number. Again. He almost didn't answer, but Elena nodded. Adrian Cole, he said wearily. Mr. Cole, this is Sarah Chen. Vanessa's younger sister. Her voice was tight with fear. I know you probably don't want to hear from my family right now, but I need to warn you. My father. He's meeting with your father tonight. They're planning something. Adrian's stomach dropped. What kind of something? I don't know exactly. But I heard them talking about Elena, about making sure she understands the consequences of interfering in business that doesn't concern her. Sarah's voice shook. Mr. Cole, my father has connections. Not good people. And he's angry about the merger falling through, about the public embarrassment. Are you saying he's threatening Elena? I'm saying you should make sure she's somewhere safe. And I'm saying I'm sorry about Vanessa. About all of it. The call ended. Adrian looked at Elena, who'd heard everything on speaker. I'm not running, she said immediately. Elena. I'm not running, and I'm not hiding, and I'm not letting them intimidate me into silence. They could hurt you. They already did. Her voice broke. 3 years ago they took everything from me. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of doing it again. Adrian wanted to argue, but his phone lit up with a news alert. His hands went numb as he read it. Breaking. Federal investigators raid Meridian Global offices. Allegations of securities fraud, insider trading, and corporate espionage. No. Elena Guisperth. Her phone started ringing. Richard Mendoza. Her CFO. Her head of security. All at once, a cacophony of crisis. It's fake, Adrian said immediately. It has to be fake. Your company is clean. Doesn't matter. Elena's face had gone pale. Even if every allegation is baseless, even if we're cleared of everything, the damage is done. My investors will panic. My clients will flee. Meridian Global's reputation is destroyed. She answered Richard's call. Listened. Her expression grew more devastated with each passing second. Understood, she said finally. Do what you can. She ended the call and sat down heavily. 3 of my major clients just pulled their accounts, she said quietly. My CFO is recommending we freeze all operations until the investigation is complete. The board wants me to step down temporarily. Adrian knelt in front of her. We'll fight this. We'll. With what? Elena's laugh was bitter. You said it yourself. Your father doesn't fight fair. He's just proven he can destroy my company with a phone call and some fabricated evidence. And if I fight back, if I push forward with exposing him, he'll make sure I lose everything. She looked at Adrian with eyes full of defeat. He wins. Again. No. Yes. She stood, moved away from him. Your father wins because I'm not willing to sacrifice every person who works for me, every client who trusted me, just to get revenge. This isn't revenge. This is justice. Justice is a luxury for people who can afford it, Adrian. I can't. Her voice was hollow. Go home. Tell your father he wins. Tell him I'll vote my shares however he wants. I'll disappear again. I'll do whatever he demands. Just make him call off the investigation into my company. Elena, you can't. Get out. She turned away. Please. Just go. Adrian stood there, helpless, watching the strongest person he'd ever known crumble under the weight of his father's cruelty. This was the darkest hour, and he had no idea how to find the light. Adrian didn't go home. He went to the one place that had always helped him think clearly, the coal industry's headquarters. The building was empty at 3 a.m., just security guards and the hum of servers keeping the empire running. He rode the elevator to his office, but found himself walking past it to the executive archives instead. The room where they kept the physical records, the history of the company his grandfather had started 70 years ago. Adrian pulled files at random. Annual reports, photographs, letters. And there, in a box marked 1955, he found something that stopped his heart. A letter from his grandfather, Edmund Cole, to the company's first employees. Adrian read it by the dim light of his phone. We build this company on one principle. That every person who works here matters. That their safety, their dignity, their lives are worth more than any profit margin. If we ever forget that, we deserve to fail. Edmund Cole had died when Adrian was 10. Adrian barely remembered him. Just impressions of a kind man who'd smelled like pipe tobacco and had always had butterscotch candies in his pocket. But this letter, these words, this was the legacy Adrian should have been protecting. Not his father's empire of lies. His grandfather's vision of integrity. Adrian pulled out his phone and called the one person he trusted more than anyone. Elena answered on the first ring. I told you to leave. My grandfather founded coal industries on a promise that every employee mattered more than profit. Adrian's voice was steady now, certain. My father broke that promise. But I don't have to. Silence. Then, Adrian, what are you doing? Something I should have done 3 years ago. Something I should have done the moment my father showed me that fabricated evidence against you. He stood, tucking the letter into his jacket. I'm choosing you over him. I'm choosing the truth over the empire. And I'm not backing down. They'll destroy us both. Probably. Adrian smiled. But we'll go down fighting. Together. If you'll have me. He heard her breath catch. You'd give up everything? Your inheritance, your father, the company? I'd give up anything to make this right. To be worthy of you. His voice dropped. 3 years ago, I chose wrong. I chose fear over love, lies over truth. I'm not making that mistake again. Another long pause. Then Elena's voice stronger now. I found something too. An hour ago, after you left. I couldn't sleep, so I kept digging into Thomas Mercer's files. What did you find? The federal investigation into Meridian Global? It was triggered by an anonymous tip. But the tip came from an IP address registered to Coal Industries' legal department. Your father fabricated the evidence and fed it to the FBI himself. Adrian's jaw clenched. Can you prove it? Richard's working on it now. If we can trace it definitively, we can prove malicious prosecution. We can turn this entire thing around. Show that your father is the one committing fraud, not me. Hope flickered in Adrian's chest. How long? 6 hours. Maybe less. Elena's voice carried a new energy. Adrian, if we can prove this, if we can show the FBI they've been manipulated, they'll turn their investigation on him instead. Yes. And once that happens, the gag order becomes irrelevant. We can hold the press conference. We can expose everything. We can win. Adrian was already moving, heading for the elevator. I'm coming to you. Where are you? Still at my office. Richard's here, and Sarachan just arrived. Apparently she copied files from her father's computer before she called you. She wants to help. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Adrian hung up and ran. He burst into Elena's office at 3:40 a.m. to find organized chaos. Richard Mendoza had documents spread across every surface. Sarah Chen sat at a laptop, her fingers flying. Elena stood at the center of it all, directing traffic like a general. She looked up when Adrian entered, and something passed between them. Understanding. Partnership. Love. Show me what you have, Adrian said. For the next 4 hours they worked. Richard traced the IP address through 3 proxy servers back to Harrison Cole's personal computer. Sarah provided emails showing collaboration between her father and Harrison to neutralize the Elena Ward problem. Adrian called in favors from federal prosecutors he'd worked with on legitimate cases, laying groundwork for when they'd need it. And Elena orchestrated it all, her brilliant mind seeing connections and angles no one else caught. At 7:30 a.m., Richard looked up from his laptop, his eyes gleaming. We have him. The IP trace is ironclad. The FBI is already pulling agents from Meridian Global and redirecting them to Cole Industries. He smiled. Harrison Cole is about to have a very bad morning. Elena sagged with relief. Adrian caught her, pulled her close. We did it, she whispered against his chest. You did it. You brilliant, terrifying, amazing woman. She looked up at him, and Adrian saw everything in her eyes. The pain of the past 3 years. The hope for the future. The love that had never quite died. The press conference, she said. We can hold it now. Margaret Reeves can tell her story. And we tell ours, Adrian added. All of it. How my father framed you. How he covered up David Reeves' death. How he tried to destroy you again when you got too close to the truth. It'll end your relationship with him forever. Good. Adrian cupped her face. He stopped being my father the moment he hurt you. Both times. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Adrian. I love you, he said. I never stopped. And when this is over, when we've burned down every lie and built something true in its place, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. We have a lot of work to do first. I know. And I'm still not sure I can trust you completely. I'll earn it. Elena smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd stepped off that helicopter. Then let's finish this. She kissed him. Hard and quick and full of promise. Then she turned to her team. Call Margaret Reeves. Tell her we're on for 10 a.m. Contact every major news outlet. And someone let the FBI know we're about to make their jobs much easier. Adrian pulled out his phone and did the one thing he'd never imagined doing. He called his father. Harrison answered immediately. Adrian, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. We need to discuss. I'm holding a press conference in 2 hours, Adrian said calmly. I'm exposing everything. David Reeves. The embezzlement. The frame job on Elena. Your attempted destruction of Meridian Global. All of it. Silence. Then. You're making a mistake. No, Vath. 3 years ago, I made a mistake. Today I'm fixing it. He hung up. And prepared for war. The press conference room was packed. Every major news outlet had sent reporters. Financial analysts crowded the back rows. Photographers jostled for position. The energy was electric, hungry. Adrian stood backstage with Elena, both of them watching through a gap in the curtain as Margaret Reeves took her seat at the main table. She looked small in the spotlight, nervous but determined. Richard Mendoza stood beside her, a stack of documents in front of him. Sarah Chun sat on Margaret's other side. She'd insisted on being visible, on publicly breaking from her family's corruption. You ready? Elena asked softly. Adrian took her hand. With you? Always. They walked out together. The camera flashes were blinding. Questions erupted from every direction. Adrian raised a hand, and gradually, the room quieted. Thank you for coming, he began. My name is Adrian Cole, CEO of Cole Industries. This is Elena Ward, founder and CEO of Meridian Global. We're here to tell you a story that's been buried for 18 years. A story about a good man who died trying to save someone's life. About the people who covered it up. And about the woman who was destroyed to keep that secret hidden. He nodded to Margaret. She leaned toward her microphone, her hands shaking. My name is Margaret Reeves, she said. 18 years ago, my husband David died in an industrial accident at a coal industries factory. I was told it was a tragic malfunction. I was paid to stay silent about it. Her voice grew stronger. But it wasn't an accident. It was negligence. And David tried to stop it. For the next 10 minutes, Margaret told her story. Every detail, David's warnings to Harrison Cole, his termination for refusing to use faulty equipment, his final act of heroism pulling a young worker from machinery he'd known was dangerous. Harrison Cole buried the safety reports, Margaret said. He rewrote the accident investigation. He paid me $5 million to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And when I took that money, I thought I was protecting my children's future. Tears streamed down her face. But I was just protecting his lies. Richard Mendoza took over, presenting the evidence. The original safety reports. David's termination letter. The settlement agreement with its ironclad NDA. Then Elena stood. 3 years ago, she said, her voice clear and cold. I was Harrison Cole's daughter-in-law. I was also a senior financial analyst at Coal Industries. When I discovered irregularities in our accounts, irregularities that trace back to the embezzlement scheme Thomas Mercer used to blackmail Harrison, I was framed for corporate espionage. She presented the evidence of the frame-up. The forged emails. The manipulated metadata. Thomas Mercer's payments to Harrison. Harrison Cole destroyed my marriage to his son, destroyed my reputation, and forced me out of the company I'd helped build. All to protect his secret. And when I returned yesterday with evidence to expose him, he tried to destroy me again. Adrian stepped forward. 20 hours ago, my father fabricated evidence of securities fraud and fed it to federal investigators to trigger a raid on Meridian Global. He attempted to use law enforcement as a weapon against someone telling the truth. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed frantically. We have proof, Adrian continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. Proof of the IP address used to submit the false tip. Proof of his collaboration with the Chun family to weaponize my wedding and a corporate merger. Proof of 18 years of cover-ups and corruption. He paused, let that sink in. Coal Industries was founded by my grandfather on a principle that every employee matters more than profit. My father betrayed that principle. He betrayed David Reeves. He betrayed Elena. He betrayed everything this company was meant to stand for. Adrian pulled the letter from his jacket, his grandfather's words written 70 years ago. This is what Coal Industries should be, he said. And effective immediately, this is what it will be again. I'm announcing a complete restructuring of the company's leadership. Harrison Cole is removed from all positions, effective today. An independent board will oversee a full audit of every business practice, every safety protocol, every decision made in the last 20 years. The room exploded again. Furthermore, Elena added, I'm using my controlling stake to establish the David Reeves Foundation, funded with $100 million from Coal Industries profits. The foundation will provide support for families of workers killed in industrial accidents, fund workplace safety improvements, and advocate for corporate accountability. Adrian looked directly into the cameras. My father built an empire on a good man's death. We're going to transform that empire into something that honors David Reeves' memory. That's justice. A reporter shouted. Where is Harrison Cole now? As if on cue, the back doors of the conference room burst open. Harrison Cole strode in, flanked by attorneys, his face purple with rage. This is slander, he roared. My own son, manipulated by a vindictive ex-wife. It's truth, Adrian said calmly. And you know it. You ungrateful, I built this company. I gave you everything. You gave me lies. Adrian's voice was steady, strong. You gave me an empire built on blood and covered in corruption. I don't want it. Harrison's eyes widened. You're insane. You're throwing away billions. I'm throwing away your version of success. Adrian moved to stand beside Elena, took her hand. I'm choosing something better. For a moment, father and son stared at each other across the crowded room. Years of expectations, of disappointments, of unspoken fears, all of it hung in the air between them. Then Harrison's expression hardened into something cold and final. "You're no son of mine," he said. "Good," Adrian replied. "I'd rather be Elena's partner than your heir." Harrison turned and walked out, his lawyers scrambling to follow. The room erupted in questions, but Adrian only heard Elena's whispered words. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." He looked down at her, this woman who'd survived everything his family had thrown at her and come back stronger. "I learned from the best," he said. The press conference lasted another hour. Richard Mendoza fielded legal questions. Margaret Reeves shared memories of David, painting a picture of a man who'd been more than just a victim. Sarah Chun explained why she'd chosen truth over family loyalty. And Adrian and Elena stood together, united, answering every question with transparency. When it finally ended, when the reporters had their soundbites and the cameras had their footage, the room slowly emptied. Margaret approached them, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." David would have been so grateful. "Your husband was a hero," Elena said gently. "The world deserves to know that." Margaret hugged them both, then left with Richard to meet with federal prosecutors. Finally, Adrian and Elena were alone in the empty conference room. "It's done," Elena said softly. "It's done," Adrian agreed. She turned to face him fully. "Your father was right about one thing. You gave up billions today." "I gave up his billions. I still have my stake in coal industries." "And you?" He smiled. "That's enough." "Is it?" Elena's eyes searched his. "Because I'm still angry, Adrian. I'm still hurt. What we had before, we can't just go back to that." "I don't want to go back." Adrian cupped her face. "I want to move forward. Build something new. Something true. That takes time." "I have time." Elena smiled, and it reached her eyes. "Then ask me." "Ask you what?" "What you've been wanting to ask since the helicopter." Adrian's heart raced. He knew what she meant. But standing here, in the aftermath of destroying his father's empire, and exposing decades of lies, it felt right. It felt like the only true thing in the world. He dropped to one knee. "Elena Ward, you are the strongest, most brilliant, most terrifying person I've ever met. You've beaten me at every turn, outsmarted me, outplayed me, and somehow still found room in your heart to give me another chance." His voice thick with emotion. "I don't deserve you, but I love you. I never stopped loving you. And I'm asking, will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth loving back?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You're asking me to marry you? Again? I'm asking you to build an empire with me. A real one. Based on truth and integrity and everything we should have been doing all along." He pulled out a ring, not the massive diamond he'd given her the first time, but a simple emerald band. "Marry me, Elena. Not because it makes business sense. Not because it looks good. But because I can't imagine my life without you in it." She was crying now, really crying. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you infuriating, impossible man. Yes." Adrian stood and kissed her as the weight of 3 years lifted. They'd won. 6 months later, Elena stood in the newly renovated coal industries headquarters, watching the dedication ceremony through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The building had been transformed. Where Harrison Cole's portrait had once dominated the lobby, now hung a memorial wall. Photographs of every employee who'd worked for the company over 70 years. David Reeves' picture held the place of honor, with a plaque describing his heroism. "They're ready for you," Adrian said, appearing at her elbow. He wore a simple suit, no longer the corporate armor he'd hidden behind. He looked lighter somehow. Free. Elena took his hand, the emerald ring catching the light, and they walked together to the podium. The crowd gathered below included Margaret Reeves and her now adult children, former coal industries employees, safety advocates, and journalists covering the company's remarkable transformation. 6 months ago, Adrian began, this company stood for profit at any cost. Today we stand for something different. People over profit. Truth over image. Integrity over empire. Elena continued. The David Reeves Foundation has already distributed $50 million to families affected by workplace accidents. We've implemented safety protocols that exceed federal standards. And we've committed to transparency in every business decision. Coal Industries isn't the biggest company anymore, Adrian said. We won't be. We've divested from ventures that didn't meet our ethical standards. We've turned down contracts that would have compromised our values. And our stock price has dropped. He smiled. But our employees are safer. Our practices are cleaner. And we can sleep at night. The crowd erupted in applause. Margaret Reeves approached the podium, her eyes shining. David would have been so proud. Not of the money, not of the foundation bearing his name, but of this. Of a company that finally chose to do right. After the ceremony, Elena and Adrian retreated to the office they now shared. His old CEO suite, redesigned for collaboration rather than intimidation. How's Meridian Global? Adrian asked, pulling her close. Thriving. Turns out being publicly vindicated of fraud charges is excellent for business. Elena grinned. 3 new clients this week alone. And the wedding plans? Your mother called again. She wants to invite 200 people. Adrian groaned. It's supposed to be small. Intimate. I told her 50 maximum. Elena kissed his jaw. We've had enough spectacle for one lifetime. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah Chun, who now worked as a whistleblower advocate, helping others expose corporate corruption. Margaret's daughter just got accepted to law school. Full scholarship from the foundation. Thought you'd want to know. Elena showed Adrian, and she saw tears in his eyes. David Reeves' daughter is going to be a lawyer, he said softly. Because of what we did. Because we told the truth. Because you chose truth over empire, Elena corrected. That was all you. It was us. Adrian turned her to face him fully. Everything good in my life is us. You make me better, Elena. You make me brave. She kissed him soft and slow. You make me believe in second chances. A knock on the door interrupted them. Richard Mendoza entered, carrying champagne and glasses. Federal prosecutors just called, he said, grinning. Harrison Cole pled guilty to fraud, embezzlement cover-up, and obstruction of justice. 18 months in federal prison, full restitution to victims, permanent ban from serving on any corporate board. Adrian exhaled slowly. He'd thought he'd feel triumphant. Instead, he just felt sad. He made his choices, Elena said gently, reading his expression. Just like you made yours. I know. Adrian accepted a glass of champagne. Doesn't make it easier. Nothing worth doing is easy. Elena raised her glass. To David Reeves. To truth. To second chances. To us, Adrian added. To building something beautiful from the ruins. They drank, and through the window, Elena could see the sun setting over Manhattan. The city where she'd lost everything and found it again. Where she'd been destroyed and rebuilt herself stronger. Where she'd learned that love, real love, wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when everything else fell apart. I love you, Adrian whispered against her hair. I know, Elena said. And this time I believe you. Outside, the David Reeves memorial glowed in the fading light. And inside, 2 people who'd lost everything began building something better. Together.